Hi, welcome to Hamilton and Hazen, Behind the Mic. Join author M.L. Hamilton and me, I'm narrator Kelley Hazen, as we discuss our latest audiobook. Born from our 7 years of collaboration and more than 60 audiobooks we've produced together, listen to the ins, the outs, the ups, and the downs, the inside track you love to follow, Behind the Mic.
Welcome to episode number 7 of Behind the Mic with Kelley Hazen and Bruce Carver and me.
Who are you?
I'm M.L. Hamilton. Today we're going to be discussing the 4th book in the World of Samar series, The Spirit of Eldon. And we're going to focus a lot on sort of the sound and the innovative way that we're kind of approaching this series that's unique to audiobooks. And one of the things that kind of came up this weekend, my son came home from San Jose. He was super excited to share this audiobook performance with me of Treasure Island. And they did it with a cast different than ours, but they had music playing and they had ambient sound and everything. And I was telling him, I said, well, it's similar to what we're kind of doing. We don't have a full cast, but it's similar to what we're doing, bringing in the sounds and the richness of the music into the production. And he was saying he'd never, because he listens to audiobooks all the time, he said he'd never seen one that did that before. So I know for this one, we even went further. We brought in quite a few different things, and I'm going to let you, Kelley and Bruce, talk about what it was that was created for this one in particular, why the need came in, and then how did that all come about?
I don't think you can
Well,
go
let
far.
me first start by saying.
I don't think you can
No,
go.
let me first start by saying we do have a full cast. The full cast is right here.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can go further than a lizard army, which we have already done.
That's true. That's true.
Come on, Treasure Island, give me a break. No, I'm just kidding. And that would be called an audio drama.
Yeah, it was something different. It was audio performance or something. It wasn't called audiobook.
Yeah, but in the biz, that's called an audio drama when you start casting people in roles, and then it's like a play without. It's just a play with just the audio.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
there was a question there.
Yeah. Well, I think we've talked in the past about the fact, and we've made it abundantly clear that when it comes to the World of Samar, this series, because it's epic fantasy, we have always felt that it couldn't be approached or recorded with the same, like in the same context as just a regular audiobook. I mean, if you're going to call something epic, then it needs to be epic. And, just me talking into a microphone there's not anything too epic about that. But so that was when we started with the soundscapes and trying to be very subtle and very really selective about when we chose to add a special effect. And this one was kind of interesting because, Michelle, you and I have talked about how this is as soon as I read this novel, it's very different than the other. It's much more philosophical. It's much more transitional. It's much more a discussion about motivation than it is. And there's plenty of action. It's not that there's not action in it, but it's a very thoughtful book, and it's very compelling in that regard, I think, because you're basically pulling back the curtain and understanding what motivates these people and what what frightens these people and what the real hopes and dreams that they have at a very very just core and soulful level. I mean, this is not your average bear of might makes right and that kind of thing. It's not black and white. It's not that kind of thing. So that being said, and because we've tried to be so selective in our sounds and when we add something so that You know, and that's a twofold, part of it is because we very much want the focus to be on your story and not on, ooh, what's the next cool special effect we're going to hear? But also because we don't want the listeners to then, we don't want to live under the burden of expectation that every time there's some kind of sound or some kind of unusual character or some, we don't want to diminish the listener's use of their imagination. Right. We're already one step removed from that because I'm deciding how these people sound and, and stuff like that. What emphasis to give words, so, okay. So that's sort of the groundwork for this. We had to come up with a world that lives between death and life.
Yeah.
Now I borrowed from Stranger Things on Netflix, and we started calling it the in-between, but only because you called it the plane between, the realm between it. The word between came up so many times that it just seemed to be appropriate to call it the in-between. And I think it's like, is it chapter 13 or what's the chapter where we really are there?
Well, let me look at my notes. I get something that looks like this.
Wow. Oh,
Pretty detailed for me.
yeah.
And because Kelley will start explaining what she wants. I mean, she's kind of the director, and she gives me a really clear idea of her thought about where the sound design should go. But then she puts it down in black and white. So that helps me.
And
So
that's
the
because
12,
Bruce looks at me and he goes, ones and O's, Kelley, ones and zeros. That's all I need. Ones and
chapter
zeros.
12.
Yeah. So in chapter 12.
12.
Yeah. So chapter 12 was when it first happens in the Spirit of Eldon. And I was like, oh, okay, let's not make a big deal out of this, because after all, we are talking about, what's it in the Catholic faith? Limbo,
Yeah.
I mean, that's another idea of it. And it's like, let's not
Yeah. It's
let's
like
go
purgatory.
there. But then as I kept reading, getting into chapter 17, chapter 19, chapter 25, chapter 26, and all of a sudden people from the voice from the in-between is now infiltrating the real world, the living world. It was like, oh no, we've got to go back. We've got to. So Bruce
So the in-between was an important environment.
Yeah.
So I felt like we needed to create an environment. But the very first thing was the death effect in 12. There was a chapter, and my first thought when I listened to something is, I don't want to put anything there because it'll just cloud it up. What I'm hearing, the words are enough and the performance is enough. But it wasn't until 20 where we had the in-between.
Bruce had to create, when the voice came back, and I don't want to give it away, right? This is a spoiler alert. When the voice started coming into the real world,
Yeah.
there was the realization that this is a big deal. I mean, this is a big deal, and there has to be an atmosphere. There has to be a location, right? It can't just be like he's on the phone, and so that's when
I need to get the hell out of here.
Who ordered the pizza? So that's when we went back. And so for me, that's what I found so striking about it, because, I heard the voice and it's like, this voice is great. I mean, this is great. This effect is great. So now how are you going to lay this over an entire scene? Go.
Right.
Your turn.
Well, there's a couple ways to do it. So first I had to find a way. Anytime you deal with any sort of effect on a voice, the main thing is, can I still hear the words? Because it's either a reverb or a modulation. And I think I was using a slight modulation. So I would keep Kelley's real voice and add to that sort of an underwater modulation that it would just kind of like prick the neck, the hairs of the neck a little bit. And then there was sort of this mystified sound that I wanted to have, the in-between. So Kelley's voice is here. So I wanted a very low sound and a really high sound. So that kind of would frame her.
Wow.
So there was a very subtle, like engines pumping sound. And then there was
Yeah.
this mist, which was actually a combination of a lot of sounds, rustling of leaves and applause. So I have all of these, 10,000 sounds in my digital audio workstation, which is Pro Tools, which is the industry standard. So I'll find a sound that's close, and then I start adding and subtracting until I find it, and then making sure that you can hear what she's saying. So that was it, finding that sound, the atmosphere of the in-between, and then what the voice would sound like in the in-between. So there are two different, I didn't want to make it all one thing. I wanted two different things.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff was some reverb and some delay, just so you would hear the voice, but there would be a delay in the back. So, you were in a different place.
Right.
And this was a really different place. So it really had to be that.
You had written, and I shared with Bruce, you had written a lot about the mist and the fog. You had said people were dressed in white, and that in general, everybody felt really good.
Yeah.
Or peaceful. And so I initially, that was what I shared with him about that as well. We used obviously your words in the initial conversation. And then the other challenge of it, that just purely technically, was that it being limbo, it being the in-between. We had already established an effect for when they were in a dream.
Right.
We had already established an effect where they were having a waking nightmare or a memory, right? Something that, we would flash back, it happened in the past. And then we had already established when something was from the past, but being told in first person, so you created the device of the book was trundling along in this particular time frame. And then all of a sudden we would be lifted out and taken into the past, but in first person. And so we had to think about, like, okay, how did we, when it was something that was happening to somebody, it was a sound that was over an entire scene. But when it was a juxtaposition of timing that was out of chronology, then it was a lead in, it was an intro and an outro kind of, or an open and a close. And so it was like, okay, so where is this going to fall? What category does this go in? And that was the other part of not just what it is, but how it is, like, how is this going to repeat itself, and how does it fit in the catalog of this soundscape that we've been creating for this series? Because there's got to be consistency, or the effects, the listener won't understand the effects. There's not that they won't understand it, but there's a logic embedded. And
Right.
if we go outside that logic, then it's almost like we break the facade of our own world that we've been creating.
So the second question I had was, Bruce, there's a scene in this one, and you've done something similar in some of the other books that we've done, but this was so effective. There's a scene where the character is playing the piano, and he's projecting these images in the minds of his listeners, and you layered this song underneath it. And Kelley and I were talking earlier about the choice of the song is kind of a contrast. It's kind of a contrast against what's happening in the actual projection. And so I kind of, but it's so effective. It works so well. When you chose that song, what was the thought process of how you did that and how that played out?
Well, that took a while. I listened to it so many times, and then I first thought, well, this has to be a piano sound. This has to be really different because we're in a different world. This is, and it's got to be fantastical. So I started looking at 20th century compositions, Stockhausen and Schoenberg, really out stuff. And I started, plugging them in and hearing it next to the your music, your words, and it didn't seem right. It seemed out of the
Excuse
ordinary.
me.
And then I tried some like avant-garde jazz stuff, and then I started composing some things, and then I'm going, maybe we should go like really against the grain. Maybe this should be romantic.
Yeah.
And so, I started looking just at piano solos, and there is a guy I do like, Michael. Should I say his name?
Okay, yeah, no, say it. You should say it.
Michael Camillo, and it's a solo a piece called Remembrance, which is interesting. And
That title, Remembrance, considering the passage that
so I didn't really think it was going to work. So I loaded it into Pro Tools, and I made some adjustments, and the start time is really important. Should there be silence? Should it be after a word? What's going to kick it off? Because the entrance of the music is so important. The timing is so important.
Yeah.
So, I found the end point, and then I listened to it, and I went, man, this is crazy. I mean, did this guy compose for this?
Yeah.
So then I went away, and I'm going, okay, maybe I dreamed it. Because I actually kind of really wanted to write something for it, but I knew it was going to take the rest of the day. So I came back and listened to it, and then I made a few more adjustments, and went, wow, maybe I should tell them that I wrote this. But I couldn't do that. So
Well,
I thought that worked, just the romance of it. It seems so out of the ordinary and extraordinary.
Michelle asked if I had played the piano when she heard it. She goes, "Is that you playing the piano?" And maybe she meant you,
Yeah.
but and it's funny because the story that he's telling while he's playing the piano, the story that he's projecting into the minds of the people who are listening, is a battle, right? A war, and because his dialect does kind of come from an Irish derivative. I had actually said to Bruce when I was thinking about it, Bruce plays on Outlander, the theme, the music for the TV series Outlander, which is Scottish Irish, and there's a beautiful song that's used for the theme song for Outlander, and it's an Irish ballad. And I had said to him, maybe that would be a great song to use for this. And so that was where my expectation was, sort of more folk oriented, but still sweeping and majestic. And so he sends me the bites in email, and he'll just, this is what I've come up with, or Talar piano or whatever. And I
hope this doesn't suck.
Yeah. And it's like, and I just listened to it again the other day, and for those watching this behind the mic, if you'd like to hear this passage, it's on our SoundCloud, Storyteller Productions SoundCloud page. You can just listen to the bite, just look for the Spirit of Eldon sound bites, and it's Talar's Piano is the name of it. But but I think that it's such, just isolated all by itself, it's extraordinary.
What's interesting about that scene, and then the choice that Bruce made for it, is it's kind of is a romantic scene in the sense that, Eldon captures this entire battling army without shedding any blood, and it solidifies his fame as this great warrior, that he was able to do this. And so there is kind of this, it kind of makes him this romantic hero in a way of being able, he becomes almost savior like in a way. And I think that was why it works so well, is that you tapped into something that was lying under the surface there.
Subtext.
Yeah, there was a subtext there that you tapped into, and you picked up on, and you brought it full circle there. So
that makes me think of two things. The underlying of Talar, the artist, returning to his instrument. He had not played in a long time.
Right.
And in the scene, he is filled with such joy to be playing again. And so there is that romantic sense of it as well. But I think it's really fascinating that so often, I mean, and you see this a lot, or I've had the chance to experience this a lot in acting, because and in life, right? There, I mean, there's a lot of times where what we're saying is not what we mean. You know, the words we're speaking, there's a completely different intention or a completely different feeling that's actually motivating us. And to be able to, and I think really good writers capture that as well in their writing. And I think that's exactly what you did in that scene. And Bruce sensed that, intuited that, and brought it out with the musical choice.
Well, and also in that scene, what it does is it bridges this bitter divide between him and the Nazar. Him playing and the Nazar suddenly like understanding him, you know, where he's always been, met him with violence. His way of trying to control him and to bring him under the fold is always with violence. And here he has this moment of epiphany while Taylor's playing, that I think that song just brought that sort of, you know, healing kind of
Humanity.
yeah to it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful scene. It's one of the many, I think that's why I'm so in love with this series, is that there's so many smaller stories and smaller gifts throughout the way than just the overriding, you know, conflict of Loden and Aram and you know, that much more general
Right.
conflict.
They expected.
Yeah.
We're so awesome.
Well, and I think, since we're talking about special sounds, and I don't know if this is the next thing you were going to bring up, but I really love what Bruce did with the voice of the Emerald.
Yeah,
Right.
that's shocked. It shocked me. You know, I think why it shocked me is that that's such a tricky thing to write convincingly, and to have that disembodied voice of the Emerald come through, and it was so menacing and so it was impressive, because there are things as an author that you worry about, and I always worry about when I take a risk like that of you know, making something that's inanimate into, you know, something personified. That's dangerous, and if it's not done well, it can come off as cheesy or gimmicky. And what happened there was that the Emerald became this very menacing, terrifying thing with that voice. And I think it just was the perfect tone to take.
Do you remember? Let him tell you how it came.
So my first thing is, I don't want to do anything to it, because what Kelley did was she whispered it.
Yeah.
She got close to the mic. So what you're hearing is full body with the transients, with the what's the not the vowels, but the consonant sounds are really sparkling just from the get. And so I'm listening to it and I'm going, you know, sometimes when you're really quiet, like, hey, listen, I'm going to find you in the parking lot and I'm going to kick you, you know.
Yeah.
When you get really quiet like that, you should be a real afraid. So I had quiet and I had low and consonant sounds. So, you know, I just listened to it. I'm going, this is really good. But let's, would it, so what is the Emerald? I mean, is it a woman or a man? So maybe we should make it so it's neither, and maybe it should be lower in pitch. So I started lowering the voice little by little until the hairs on the back of my neck started. And then I added some ultra high in, because she talks like this, these those extra sounds. at the end. So they're at the ends of the words. I almost wish I had the notes there, what you were saying. But when she would end a word, she would hit the consonant.
It's called enunciating.
Yeah, no, so she over enunciated. So I think the cool thing was she recorded at a low volume.
Actually, that's articulating.
But articulated it really good.
Well, and I had told him from the beginning, and it's exactly what you said, that when you start to give something like that a voice, you're walking a fine line. And so I did really little with it. And then I said to him, we've got to give the emerald a voice. Oh my God.
Right.
And I said, I did a thing. And he's always saying, I'm always going, I think we need something here. And he's going,
Yeah.
doesn't need it, doesn't need it, doesn't need it. And so I actually said to him, I did a thing, and you might want to do more with it, but you might not, I'm thinking you might not need to do anything. And then that's what he came up with.
Yeah, but so what you did at first was great, and it would have been great, and it was, and I still have the original. That would be an interesting to pair those.
To put them side by side, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be really cool.
But when I did the drop, it was one of these things when I'm at my desk, and I'm really technical in getting it. I'm looking, and I'm seeing waveforms, and I'm dealing with numbers and low frequency oscillators and high frequency oscillators and splitting this. And then when I hear it, it's like, oh my God, what? I look around, did you hear that?
Yeah, I came down to the studio to listen to it, and I just lay on the floor and listen, because we've got these great speakers, right? You don't have to listen on headphones. And it was the same thing happened to me that happened to you. The hair on the back of my neck just stood up. I got chilled.
What I think is so interesting about that is that there in the book, there's this sense like, is he really hearing it, or is it his mind that's doing it? And I think that voice, because he's so tortured at that point, and he's so uncertain of what he's hearing, I think that comes across with that voice, like, it could be his subconscious talking here, and I think that's, because he's very much believing he's going to his death at that point.
Yeah, it's just one of several things that makes this, aside from the fact that the book all by itself is just so special, that this is a real standout in the series, I think. And
one last thing about that is, of course, our studio is really quiet, but I really made sure there was absolutely no noise going on from the get-go. So there's space right before the emerald talks. I made sure I just wiped it, so it's dead. Yeah. So there's nothing, and all of a sudden, bam! It hits you like, what is this?
We'll see if we can put that soundbite together too, of what I originally did against what we came up with, what Bruce finally came up with. It might be fun to have that available for listeners and fans to listen to on SoundCloud. So
that's a good idea. Well, that takes us. We are running out of time here, but I'm super excited about this book. I'm super excited what we've done with this series, and I think it's elevated it to, art, which I've said that before, but I stand by it, and I appreciate everything that you put into this, Bruce, because I know that it's a lot we ask of you.
Right. Well, I have somebody that kind of requires me to do it. But my original job is just to produce it, make sure everything the numbers are right and it's loud enough and soft enough. So it's nice to put my other musical talents into it. So it's very inspiring for me. Both of you inspire me.
Well, she will tell me, she'll send me a text message. She'll say, I think we need something here. And I say, what do we need? This happens frequently, by the way, Bruce. I say, well, what do you think we need? And she says, let Bruce and I noodle it.
Just let us do something with it.
Let us noodle it. And I go, sometimes forward and conquer.
Sometimes we just wait. Sometimes I don't even warn you, and just, then it just comes. It's like, well, and Bruce will be like, has Michelle gotten back to us about chapter 19 yet? No, I haven't. She hasn't listened to it yet. Okay, well, let's see. And then a text will come up and it'll be like, oh my God, chapter 19.
I'm running out of things to, because nothing seems like, all caps this time, all caps, 3 exclamation points.
It's a good thing we like working together.
Yes. Well, thank you guys. And we will be back for our next, we're going to be revisiting Zion. We're going to come back into the Sequoia world. And that will be our next.
Mystery, baby, cozy mystery.
Yeah. So we'll be coming back to that. It's been a year since we had one out. So.
Well, it's about time.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for 7 Behind the Mic.
Yep. Take care.
All right.
Thank you for joining us for Hamilton and Hazen Behind the Mic. Visit authormlhamilton.net and kelleyhazennarrates.com to join our newsletters for more insider news and views. Today's episode is sponsored by Phoenix Publication Services. PPS, Digital Shepherds. Let us ignite your writing goals.